Cognitive revolution. In the early 1950s, a movement called the cognitive revolution took place in response to behaviorism. Cognitivism is the belief that much of human behavior psychologists should avoid studying mental processes because they are unobservable. Cognitivism is, in part, a synthesis of earlier forms of analysis, such as behaviorism and gestaltism. Like behaviorism, it adopts precise quantitative analysis to study how people learn and think. Like gestaltism, it emphasizes internal mental processes. Three main influences account for its modern development. 1. The research on human performance, which was given a great boost during World War II when governments badly needed practical information about how to train soldiers to use sophisticated equipment and how to deal with problems such as the breakdown of attention under stress. Behaviorism offered no help with such practical issues. Although the work during the war had a very practical bent, the issues it raised stayed with psychologists when they went back to their academic laboratories after the war. The work of Donald Broadbent at the Applied Psychology Research Unit in Cambridge was probably the most influential in integrating ideas from human performance research with new ideas that were developing in an area called information theory. Information theory is an abstract way of analyzing the processing of information. 2. It was closely related to the development of the information processing approach, was developments in computer science, particularly artificial intelligence (AI), developed by Alan Newell and Herbert Simon, which tries to get computers to behave intelligently. A host of concepts have been taken from computer science and used in psychological theories. Observing how we can analyze the intelligent behavior of a machine has largely liberated us from our inhibitions and misconceptions about analyzing our own intelligence. 3. Cognitive psychology was linguistics, which studies the structure of language. In the 1950s, Noam Chomsky began to develop a new mode of analyzing the structure of language. His work showed that language was much more complex than had previously been believed and that many of the prevailing behaviorist formulations were incapable of explaining these complexities. George Miller introduced the magical number 7 plus or minus. Miller's work thus exemplified how the limits of people's cognitive capacities could be measured and tested. He was instrumental in bringing these linguistic analyses to the attention of psychologists and in identifying new ways of studying language. Other historical trends. The establishment of the field of human factors engineering. During the war, military personnel had to be trained to operate complicated pieces of equipment. Engineers quickly found they needed to design equipment, such as instrument operating panels, radar screens, and communication devices, to suit the capacities of the people operating it. Psychologists and engineers thus developed the concept of the man-machine system, now referred to as the person-machine system. That machinery operated by a person must be designed to interact with the operator's physical, cognitive, and motivational capacities and limitations. A limited capacity processor means that people can do only so many things at once. When I'm typing, I find it difficult, actually impossible, to simultaneously keep up my end of a conversation or follow a television news broadcast. Similarly, when I concentrate on balancing my checkbook, I can't also recite multiplication tables or remember all the teachers I've had from kindergarten on. Although I can do some tasks at the same time, I can fold the laundry while I watch television, the number and kinds of things I can do at the same time are limited. Many studies of cognitive psychology, that cognitive psychologists after World War II, clearly focus on exploring the nature of our capacity limitations. Another cognitive revolution came from neuroscience, the study of the brain-based underpinnings of psychological and behavioral functions. Descartes. Over the issue of localization of function. To say a function is localized in particular region is the neural structures supporting that function reside in a specific brain area. Carl Lashley, 1929, there was no reason to believe that major functions, such as language and memory, are localized. Donald Hebb. Some kinds of functions, such as visual perceptions, were constructed over time by the building of cell assemblies, connections among sets of cells in the brain. David Hubel and Torsten Wiesel, Nobel Prize-winning neurophysiologists, cells in the visual cortex of cats were in fact specialized to respond to specific kinds of stimuli, orientation of lines, particular shapes. In 1936, a mathematician, Alan Turing, wrote a paper describing universal machines, mathematical entities that were simple in nature but capable in principle of solving logical or mathematical problems. The comparison of people's cognitive activities to an operating computer. Both computers and people often store information and must therefore have structures and processes that allow such storage. People and computers often need to recode information. People and computers must also manipulate information in other ways, transform it, for example, by rearranging it, adding to or subtracting from it, deducing from it, and so on. Computer scientists working on the problem of artificial intelligence now study how to program computers to solve the same kinds of problems humans can and whether computers can use the same methods that people apparently use to solve such problems. In the 1970s, a related new field called cognitive science emerged. It attempts to integrate research efforts from psychology, philosophy, linguistics, neuroscience, and AI. The fields of cognitive psychology and cognitive science overlap. Cognitive science. Methods is logical analysis and the computer simulation of cognitive processes. Cognitive psychology. Experimental techniques for studying behavior that grew out of the behaviorist era.